Welcome to We Are North Texas, a podcast produced by the University of North Texas system that shines the light on good work and good deeds by extraordinary people from the UNT system and its member institutions, the University of North Texas, UNT Dallas, and the University of North Texas Health Science Center. As the only university system based in and completely dedicated to the Dallas-Fort Worth region, we are North Texas. Welcome to the We Are North Texas podcast. I'm Paul Corliss, Chief Communications Officer for the UNT system. With me today is University of North Texas Vice President and Athletic Director Wren Baker. Wren, how's everyone holding up in Mean Green Nation during this crazy time we're going through?
Well, it's certainly trying times, and we're all going through it, right? I mean, this isn't just one athletic department, one university, or even one entity in the country. This is all of us are involved in this pandemic in some way, and are most everybody is suffering through some difficult decisions and some trying times. But got my health and family, and work with a great team of people, great coaches and student athletes, leadership at the institution, both with the president and his cabinet and Chancellor Rowe and her leadership team. So all in all, we feel blessed, and we know we're going to get through this. And when we do, we're going to be better off on the other side of it.
Well, can you give us sort of a thumbnail sketch of what the athletic department looks like from an operational standpoint right now?
It's pretty lean. We've got a lot of people working at home doing Zoom. What we did as soon as this hit was all of those projects or research things and or wonder what ifs that we've had, and we all have these, but we never get around to it. And so we submitted all of those to our executive leadership team in the department. And then we handpicked some for each division we're working on. So we meet a couple times a week to get updates on those. The executive team and I meet multiple times a week. There's four of us on that, four and plus me, five total on that group. We're planning through a variety of things, alternative sports schedules, different funding possibilities, shortfalls, cuts. Making sure we're trying to take care of all of our student athletes. So it's all done there's a lot of work going on. It's just being done remotely. Sure. No, it is a busy time, as we were talking about offline with one another, and lucky to be working and doing the work we do. As a Mean Green fan, had an incredible men's basketball season, right? I mean, that team was peaking at the right time, had played a tough early season schedule, and then really was dominant as you were heading down to the conference tournament. And then what a gut punch that must have been for Coach McCaslin and his team. Can you speak on what that must have felt like? And I know you're a basketball coach at heart. What was that like? I'm not a very good basketball coach. I'll still be doing it, but I do love the round ball. It was crazy because that was right during the time when so much was starting to change about the narrative of this. And I will acknowledge even my ignorance at that point in time. I was reading a little bit about it. We were hearing a little bit about it, but I still viewed it kind of like Ebola, swine flu, bird flu, all H1N1, all these things that over the last few years we knew could be a problem, right? And it could cause some national issues, but they've never really affected the United States in a profound way. And so I think you knew this was going on, but it was kind of like, oh, that'll never happen to us. So, I think there was a little bit of an ego and a little bit of ignorance for a lot of us. So heading into that tournament week, that was kind of the backdrop. Everybody knew it was a discussion point, but I don't think anybody understood across the country how quickly it was going to become, a huge point of emphasis. Dan Woken, who writes for USA Today, is actually a friend of mine. He had wrote an article that week that said he didn't think we'd play a tournament. And I remember texting him the article and saying, "What are you talking about?" So, I think there was just a lot of things going on. Then as the tournament kicks off, the ADs are all there. So we're meeting, we're having lots of conversations.
And then, the Oklahoma City Thunder game is happening on TV. And that's kind of when, everything from a sports perspective grinded to a halt. They stopped that game, pulled Willie Gobert off the floor. And I remember being home. That was a Wednesday night. We'd opened in the tournament that day. Our women's team lost a really tough game to Charlotte. The men were opening the next day. And I remember thinking, God, this can't be happening. I think the immediate impact over that next 48 hours is first we canceled the conference tournament. Then a day later, we end up finding out the NCAA tournament's going to be canceled.
Yeah.
And I happened to be on campus when I got word NCAA was going to be canceled, and the men's basketball team was actually shooting around in the gym, and so I went over there. That's probably as heartbreaking a moment as I've had as an AD in a long time.
Yeah.
Lots of kids just lost. It was like finding out, that a loved one that you cared about was gone suddenly. They just kind of looked lost. Nobody wanted to leave. Lots of tears. So I think those first 48 hours were really difficult. But I think once you get past that, everybody starts to realize this is about so much more. And that lots of people are losing much more than a basketball season or a game. They're losing their lives, their livelihoods. And so I think our kids understood that, and Coach McCaslin led that. He was very, very mature in the way that he handled this, very had a great perspective. And they quickly kind of focused on, we missed out on postseason, and we, we'll always think about that and wonder what if. But what about the season that we had? And what I shared with the kids when I spoke to them after that day was, in sports, it's always good to have a end point that you're journeying to, but it's the journey that matters in the end. And they had an unbelievable journey. We had such a great run. They got to win a conference championship, clinch it on their home floor. And we had a lot of conversations leading up to that because they still had to go play one more regular season game at Charlotte. How big do we want to make this celebration? And Coach McCaslin gave us the ability to blow it out. And he's come back to me multiple times and said how much he appreciates that we had streamers and T-shirts and net cuttings and trophy presentations and all of that kind of stuff, because that's going to be the takeaway memory for those kids. They're going to remember that forever. So I think they've handled it remarkably well. They've displayed great maturity, and I'm really proud of Coach McCaslin, his staff, and those players.
Well, the athlete perspective is so interesting to me because, if you're a senior, you're, in most cases, you're done. The spring sport athletes, though, they didn't get to have that complete season, right? So they had just started. I know softball was doing well. How was the perspective different for those student athletes that didn't get to have, that ending point that you mentioned?
Well, they were disappointed. You talk about our softball team. They had beat 2 top 10 teams on their home field. And so, I think they were very disappointed. But they'll have the opportunity to return. They were granted an extra year of eligibility by the NCAA.
Yeah, could you clarify how that's going to work and what athletes are eligible and how that's going to play out?
Basically, any spring sport will be granted a year of additional eligibility, and if they needed a clock extension. So you really have two things that you're working with there. You have 4 years of athletic eligibility, and you have a 6-year clock to get it in. Mm-hmm. So sometimes if you have a true red shirt and then you have a medical red shirt, you could be out of clock. And the NCAA has said, hey, if you need a clock extension to get that in, you can have it. Then additionally, like in our case, I think we lose 6 seniors, I want to say, and we signed 9. We'd already signed 9. And so now that puts you over in scholarships. In baseball, there's a hard roster number. And so a lot of teams, we don't have baseball at North Texas, but a lot of teams are over there. So the NCAA provided relief there. Basically, at the institution's discretion, they can over-award they don't have to count those seniors.
Oh, okay, that's important.
Aid packages for 1 year. Now, if those seniors choose to like transfer somewhere else, they would count in somebody else's. But if they remain at your institution, provided you give them the same or a lesser amount of aid, you don't have to count them. So that's great for the kids, but it also presents new challenges to institutions who are already facing incredible financial pressure. So what we basically have done is said, hey, we're going to put a hard freeze on any new NLIs until you decide, head coach, who you want to bring back, who you don't.
NLI, National Letter of Intent.
National Letter of Intent. That would be a high school player coming in. We're not going to issue any more of those, and try and work within our limits where we can. We take into account where a kid is academically, how close are they to graduating. That's the first filter. Then, the coach has some discretion in terms of, is this a position that I really wouldn't need somebody to return and they don't need to academically return? Is it in their best interest, our best interest? So there's some discretion in there. We're working through all of that. But by and large, our goal is to give the seniors who want to return the opportunity to return to the extent that we can afford it.
It feels good. I know as that decision was kind of coming down the pike, I looked on social media and you'd see some athletes that were seniors, spring athletes, appealing, posting letters that they should get that opportunity. So it's nice to see that. Since we're on the NCAA, I wasn't going to dive into the finances talk just yet, but I imagine the bulk of the NCAA's revenue comes from the basketball tournament, the TV deal, the stadium deals that they have in place. How is that going to impact an athletic department like yours?
It's significant. So our budget at the University of North Texas is about $39 million in that ballpark. We get about $1.2 million from the NCAA. And each year, that's our share of the tournament per se. There's a complicated formula on how they award that and some discretion given to conferences. But we're expecting that number to be down as much as $900,000. The NCAA chose not to. They could have went out and tried to secure a line of credit, and kept that whole. But not knowing what the future looks like, that digs a hole that, you do that a couple of times and you could be putting yourself in significant jeopardy. So our conference received those funds and they're going to disperse them. The conference is looking into what if we did a line of credit. The problem that a lot of people have right now is even if you have a healthy reserve, the conference has a pretty good reserve, the NCAA has a reserve. Cashing out, most of those reserves are investments, and cashing those out right now.
I had time to do that. We see it the same thing with the UNT system, right? Yes. Liquidity is a question. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you really don't want to be in a position to be cashing out those investments right now. And so, it's undetermined but our current loss is projected to be about $900,000 in a $39 million budget. So it's significant, especially when you compound that with other losses of revenue that we're anticipating or that we already know we're going to have. And so, the conference could come back and mitigate that down some. Every bit helps, but my guess is it would at least be $500,000 and up to almost $1 million loss for us inside this fiscal year. That would have been revenue that was dispersed May and June to us and would count inside this fiscal year.
And that's not even considering the possibility of football maybe not happening in some capacity or with fans or any of that, right?
Yeah, there's such a variety of scenarios, and that's what makes this so hard. Normally, when you have a problem, I always use an example, like if you're falling downstairs, the best thing you can do is quit falling so that you know where you're starting from to climb back up. And so that's the problem here. We don't really know where the bottom is just yet in terms of finances. And so football, that'll be a fall revenue issue, but you compound that with if there's an enrollment hit, that's going to hurt our income from student fees. We get most of our money. I put it in 3 buckets. The institution gives us a subsidy. The student fee brings in a significant amount, and then the rest is self-generated. Ticket sales, media, marketing and media sales, all of those different things, all those different special event revenues, all of that. So when you look at something like the fall and you don't yet know when we'll return to normal, whatever normal is going to be, you don't know what those revenue hits are. You can anticipate if enrollment's down that we would take a hit in our campus subsidy. If enrollment's down, that's inherently going to give us a hit in our student fee. And then if we're not playing football, donations are going to be down, ticket sales are going to be down, concessions, parking, all those ancillary revenues. Plus, if we're not playing football and enrollment's down, we don't have kids on campus, we're probably not hosting any special events. And we do a pretty significant revenue stream over the year with special events. And then if you look at your marketing and media and what we get from advertising and sponsorships, those people's revenue is going to be way down, so they're going to be cutting. So it just is such a ball that picks up steam rolling downhill. So we
almost want to explode when you think about it.
Yeah,
we have the same conversations on the
planning,
academic side of the house too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're planning basically on 4 different scenarios for the fall. One is just a haircut where we eliminate pretty much all of our elective expenditures. 2, it would be cut until it bleeds, and that's that would be cutting all elective and many of what we consider important expenditures. We consider expenditures in 3 categories: elective, important, essential. Mm-hmm. And so, but eventually you get down, you have to plan a scenario where you're cutting essential things. I won't go into the categories of what that means, but it would be significant impact to a lot of people. But at this point in time, you got no recourse but to plan for all those different scenarios. Now, I'm an optimist. And even the last couple of days, we've had a lot of reason to be optimistic. I believe we're going to find a way to play, and athletics will be an important part of campuses healing and reuniting. But I also have an obligation to be prepared for what if that doesn't happen. And so we're walking through those scenarios and trying to make sure we're prepared for them.
And is the decision, and I'm going to focus a little bit on football, not to shun the other sports, but that's the big revenue generator, and we are in Texas after all. Is that decision what happens with football? Does the NCAA dictate that? Does the conference dictate? How does that work?
I think medical experts do. Now, I think the NCAA, they have a team of medical experts there, and they're very, very well regarded and well respected. But I think really it'll be national policy, state policy, institutional policy. I don't know if we have widespread institutions not having on-ground campuses in the fall that we can have football in the fall. Now, that being said, we can back it up. We can play spring football. That's something that's being discussed some nationally. I do think there's going to be a strong appetite to get it in. We need to get it in. It's too important for a variety of reasons. Forget the money for a second. It's too important in what it does to the morale and the pride and the relationship building and bonding on campuses. But I definitely think there's a distinct possibility there could be modified schedule in place. And so all of those are being discussed. But even in the last couple of days, you've seen as coaches are starting to weigh in on when they think we should return. They're not experts, and no one really cares to hear what the coaches think right now.
I'm sure the coaches are gosh darn ready to return as normal. Right?
They're not used to nobody caring what they think. Usually their opinions carry a lot of weight. So I think some of them are struggling with that. But right now, it's the medical experts, and that's who we got to listen to. And I want to return. The financial viability of my department depends on us returning at some point. But I don't want to return not one day before it's a safe environment for our student athletes. That their health and safety comes first and foremost to me. The health and safety of our campus community comes right in behind that, and the community at large. And so we need to get back to normal. We all do, for our mental health, for our emotional health, for our financial health. But at the end of the day, your health and well-being has to come first. And certainly for those young people that we're in charge of helping them grow and develop, that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Well, as you look for good news on the athletics front, we have seen lots of, recruiting news in football and other sports, athletes that have committed to come to Denton and UNT. Are the coaches that are recruiting, are we recruiting through Zoom? How has rules changed as far as how you recruit in this time?
Yeah,
how's that working?
So in the wake of all this, the NCAA shut down in person, on campus, and off campus recruiting. So you can still have phone calls and all that stuff, but you can't do any in person or off person recruiting. They've also suspended all new NLIs, which we referenced earlier as the national letter of intent. That's how you sign a freshman to play with you. Really, there's a lot of stuff happening virtually via Zoom, that kind of stuff. Right now, you see some kids verbally committing, but like a lot of the stuff you see us pushing out is we're going back and rehashing classes and kids that we've already signed.
Okay.
Just to have content. And
yeah, absolutely.
Like right now, there's a lot of people who have an appetite for sports, and there's not much sports content. So there's been a lot of things that we've pushed out that we actually pushed out over the last year or two even.
Okay.
People are like, oh, this is cool. And so we're playing some of our favorite episodes, I guess. But
well, it's good to have that content out there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
As a diehard Mean Green fan, you need to scratch that itch a little bit.
No doubt. And so, I think probably where a lot of people's focus are, and Jared Mosley, who's our COO, this has been 90% of his time outside the budget he spent on looking at all the different options we could have to do virtual visits and virtual recruiting, campus tours, locker room, facility tours, all that kind of stuff. And so we're working on that. We hope that we have some stuff we always had, but it's kind of one of those we were talking earlier about projects you never get around to. We've had a lot of discussions around here the last couple of years about ramping that up. And now that's more important than ever. So we'll within the next 2 or 3 weeks roll out a bunch more initiatives, and then we'll add content over the course of the spring. I don't know when they'll open recruiting back up, but I can't see it happening anytime before probably middle of June. Right. And so this will be the life that we live for now, but they will have to open up NLIs at some point. So there's going to be some high school kids that sign that haven't had coach in their home or haven't come and made a visit to campus.
Well, I want to shift gears a little bit. We started this podcast really to shine the light on really positive things that are happening within UNT world, as the chancellor likes to call it, during this pandemic. And I've been on a daily call at 7:30 every morning that our vice chancellor for facilities, Steve Marashevsky, leads, and there's a leader from each campus that gives an update on what's going on and what each of our 3 universities are doing during the pandemic. And on one of the calls, they had talked about your willingness to allow your facilities or a facility, or whether it was a super pit, the football practice facility, to be used for emergency purposes in Denton County if necessary, if we got to that point. And I thought that was such a testament to you and your department that you'd be willing to do that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is as any university, but especially a state university, you receive support from a variety of areas. And this campus, this community, this region has done so much for the University of North Texas and so much for our athletic department. And so, it's the right thing to do. And any way that we can pitch in and help in recovery efforts and fighting this pandemic, we're going to. We're not using those facilities right now anyway. They're sitting empty, and they're big, beautiful facilities, and with a lot of functionality and a lot of potential. And in my mind, it does nothing but reinforce the investment in those facilities, and that they were about more than just sports, more than just a handful of student athletes being able to use them, that they're truly community facilities, and that when given the opportunity, that they enhance the quality of life for the community. And that's something that I believe every day. But if given the opportunity to help out in a dire situation, we absolutely would open our arms and be happy to do that and be excited about it.
Well, having worked in sports a little bit and worked for an NFL team, I know how those facilities, people are very possessive about those facilities, coaches, and to have you be willing to offer that up to the community, I think sends a great message to everybody in North Texas. So, thank you for that. Had a couple more questions for you as we wind down here, and this is more big picture, trying to look in the crystal ball into the future. What do you think the long-term impact of this pandemic will be on college sports when this is all said and done?
Americans' appetites for sports, there's fan is short for fanatic. And so I think while we may take some different precautions at sporting events, we may have more hand sanitizer stations, we may have more restrooms where you don't have to touch anything in the restroom. I think everybody's going to be more aware of germs and the spread of germs coming out of this. I don't know about you, Paul, but being confined at home, my sense of wanting to be in a community and wanting to be amongst friends, wanting to be at my church in person, wanting to, even thinking about how many family reunions that I haven't went to, that what I would give to be able to see those people now. I don't think this is going to make people not want to go to places where there's large crowds, concerts, sporting events, churches, that kind of thing. I think we'll all be more aware of what we need to do to make sure that we're avoiding germs and the spread of any kind of infectious diseases. But I think more than ever, at least for me personally, and most people I talk to, I think the value of those social interactions with people, being a part of a community, is more meaningful than it ever has been. And so I think out of this, we're going to see some financial ramifications that last for a while. People's expendable income may be down. We may have to look at price points and those kind of things. But I think the appetite for live sporting events will be very strong. And I think we'll be a part of the healing on campus communities throughout the country. We're just excited for the opportunity when we have this thing under control, when we win against COVID-19 and are able to resume a more normal schedule that's filled with all kinds of get-togethers, including those at sporting events.
Well, you set the table perfectly for my last question I had for you. And, as someone that works in sports, I know you must feel this way, that sports, while sometimes you could trivialize it, it's just a game. There's something special about sports and American culture. Memories, whether it's going to a game with your dad or your mom, or being with friends during college at an incredible event, it can really help healing. And I think that happened to a degree with 9/11 when sports disappeared for only a week, as opposed to what we're going through now. When sports resumed, in the NFL in particular is what jumps out at me because it was in the fall. It felt like it was a catalyst for healing in the country, and wanted to get your thoughts on, can that happen again in this scenario?
I think it can, and I think it will. I think we'll be a big part of. I just think the timing of it's all going to kind of logistically show where it'll be a part of. I mean, can you think about the exuberance in the next basketball game that you go see? I mean, if you're a sports fan, you're gonna be so fired up when you get a chance to go again. And I think we've learned two things out of this. Well, we've learned a lot of things, but two things that stick out to me. One is that sports isn't the most important thing, and I think sometimes on campuses we lose sight of that. And I think right now, I joked about coaches. No one wants to hear their opinion right now, but It shouldn't be head coaches whose opinion carries the most weight on college campuses. It should be the president and the board. And so I think that kind of perspective is a positive thing. I think, too, the inspirational stories behind sports, you can't see it from this angle, but there's to my right, your left would be there's a picture of what we call the drive here. It was a game 2 years ago against UTSA.
Amazing game. I was there with the chancellor. She flipped the coin that day.
90, let's see here. It's 98 yards, no timeouts, 1:07 left. And I'll be really candid and transparent. I'm ever an optimist, and I believe in our student athletes. I thought that game was over. We won a thrilling game. It was one of the craziest endings I've ever seen. And at the end of that game, they asked Mason Fine, the quarterback, about it. He goes, "Hey, as long as there's time and downs, we've got a chance to win this game." And, I think that's what sports teaches us. And coming out of this, I think that kind of feel-good stories and the drama that occurs within the games and the ups and downs and overcoming adversity, we're going to need to see that exemplified in something as simple as a college sporting event. And so that's going to be fun, and I can't wait to see our fans and our students and everybody in those stands celebrating together and not having to worry about the fear of are we spreading this terrible virus.
Well, we appreciate the optimism and the commitment to our student athletes and the commitment to the community in Denton and North Texas as a whole. Wren Baker, thanks so much for taking time to visit with us. I know Mean Green Nation appreciates everything you and your coaches and your team do, and we're looking forward to lighting the tower green here very soon. And thank you also to our listeners for stopping in for some good news from UNT World. I'm Paul Corliss. We'll talk to you soon.
Go Mean Green. Thanks, Paul.
Mean Green, that's right.
UNT World is a special place filled with talented and dedicated students, faculty, and staff that do amazing things every day. With our heart in North Texas, we transform lives and create economic opportunity through education. We are North Texas. I'm Paul Corliss. Talk to you soon.